Welcome back. This time we are going to talk about recent declarations made by some people from the Trump administration, all of them unfortunate, of course. Let's start with the first one, probably the most alarming. A couple of days ago, Defense Secretary Hegseth warned of an imminent threat of China invading Taiwan. Considering the dependence of the United States on Taiwan chips, high-tech chips especially, which is not going to change in the short term, this would have demanded military action on our side. Of course, nothing happened besides, with the help of the never-ending tariff news, by helping China form coalitions and concerned allies about the erratic behavior of this administration, which turns it into a very unreliable partner and even a more unreliable foe. And the worst is not an unavoidable process of decoupling started with Biden's policy inspired in Jake Sullivan's stupid ideas, which has been confirmed or validated by the silence of the Democratic Party on this issue. But the fact that China's deflation could actually end up pushing Xi Jinping to embrace a military way out. And in that extreme case, the real nightmare scenario, if you were Xi, where would you start actions? Military actions, I mean. Helping Putin in Ukraine or in the South China Sea? If your goal were to secure a reasonable chance at victory without alienating your allies in Asia, or at least at not losing, my bet would be that you would support Putin. Actually, we could see that in the way China is more and more openly helping Putin's war machine. And only if Europe caves for the United States attacks would she would consider severing the chip supply line by attacking Taiwan, but only as a secondary action. At least that's what I would do if I were Xi Jinping. But if you believe Hegseth is the only one saying stupid things at the Trump's national security apparatus, you'd be wrong. General Kellogg and Witkoff don't cease to parrot Putin's propaganda. Kellogg, by insisting in concessions in advance that we must necessarily do to Russia because we all know that if we serve Putin Ukraine on a silver plate, he from then on he would be a good boy and respect all his obligations with European his European neighbors. And Witkoff, by highlighting business opportunities in Russia and Ukraine, as if the war had ended already, which, considering the inclination of this administration, would end with Ukraine's capitulation. And Ukraine's capitulation, of course, would lead to turning Ukraine into Belarus. There is no other outcome, unless you still believe in unicorns. Even Trump has joined them by expressing concerns about NATO's enlargement, echoing Putin's existential threat narrative, and warning of Putin's response to a spider web as if it were with a tacit condemnation of the operation, far from celebrating it as what it is a sample of what a small country could do to stop the ambitions of big military power. This is not different from what happens after he suspended intelligence aid to Ukraine, so making it easier for Putin to recover Kursk. Actually, it was too much of a coincidence that the Russians were prepared for first the ambush to Zelensky in the White House that where was used as an excuse to suspend the Starlink assistance, so leaving Ukraine's defenses blind. As Jack Watling has declared recently to Foreign Affairs, the rate of Russian casualties is unsustainable, and the balance may tilt in favor of Ukraine if Europe has the will to resist and overhaul its fragmented defense system. Let's remember once again that not even the most naive people, well, probably the most naive people, believe that Putin is going to respect his military, the obligations that would come from a ceasefire in which Ukraine would be humiliated. On the contrary, he would use Ukraine's humiliation to destabilize it and turn it into another Georgia, as he has tried in other places like Slovakia, Romania, Moldova, and the list is long. Getting another Minsk, what Trump's ceasefire would produce in the best case scenario, because at least Minsk has some declarative guarantees that in the case of Trump's ceasefire are not even there. As I said, getting another Minsk is not a recipe for lasting peace. On the contrary, it would be a recipe to show everybody that Europe is extremely detached from reality to believe that that could be a lasting peace, or that Europe is too weak and afraid to accept the fact that the war must continue until there are clear indicators that Putin cannot and will not be able to launch another operation of that magnitude against another European state, and or continue his hybrid war. Europe must set clear guidelines and use coalitions to bypass Brussels' slowness and petty interests that are putting obstacles in Mercedes for to overhaul the European defense procurement. Europe must seek Mercedes' leadership, not Trump's. And because of Poland's elections and the bad work of mass media at transmitting relevant news, time is not in the favor of Russia, but it isn't either in the favor of Europe. And Poland's recent elections might be a warning sign. If Tusk loses its vote of confidence in the next days, I am recording this video before that vote, Ukraine will not only lose an important military ally, but also, most probably, the generous help Poland has provided Ukrainian grain to avoid the Black Sea. Europe needs to project strength, and it needs to project strength now. It's not possible that FDR and Stalin reconverted their economies in 1 year, while Europe, after 3 years, still looks defenseless and stumbling on its own feet. And a good start would be a new, credible Ukraine narrative that centers in Europe's interest. And this European interest should be to avoid the precarious spot in which, among other things, on the field of energy would find itself if the Putin-Trump's idea of areas of influence prevails, and Europe is turned into a vassal of into a vassal in that scenario. So Europe must use its strength, the fact that it has 10 times Russia's GDP, to reconvert. If it can get into an agreement with China, well, if that agreement with China in terms of trade and Ukraine are still possible, well, even better. But what it cannot do is to try to put obstacles on Mercedes' efforts, hoping to get the best of European funds, like in the case of the New Generation Fund, and then wait for the better. That would be as irresponsible as Neville Chamberlain hoping for the better after bullying Czechoslovakia to Hitler the Sudetenland. The difference is that at least Neville Chamberlain could say that he didn't have a point of reference like 1938, while European leaders today cannot use that excuse. And having said that, let me leave you with our newscast.
Good evening. This is Brian Thomas Simons, and these are the main headlines of this hour. Among other news.
New 266 executive decisions were released in the Oval Office during the weekend. Among them, 1. State Secretary Little Marco was called via Zoom to inform him that on top of his duties as State Secretary, National Security Advisor, and EPA Administrator, he will be appointed DOJ Administrator since President Trump wants Amy Gleason at the front of more important tasks and DOJ's status is unclear. Visibly emotional, Secretary Rubio thanked President Trump for the new appointments. Likewise, he declared that he was always available if, in the end, the president no longer wanted Hegseth as defense secretary. When he asked whether he could return to Florida for a week, President Trump emphatically said that that was impossible, that he had to stay in the Maldives and sent him 3 more medals. 2. Another executive decision declared that Chief of Staff Susie Wiles did not try to take her own life after realizing how her career had hit bottom. In fact, Chief of Staff Wiles is very proud and motivated to have her name attached to this administration, declared Press Secretary Leavitt. 3. Secretary Rubio is declared not unhappy for being confined to the Maldives and will manage his DOJ-related duties from that island, Secretary Leavitt declared. B. Democrats present their SAM strategy to speak with American men. The authors of the handbook declared that identifying American men's priorities was paramount before drafting any message directed to that constituency. After concluding that not all men are equal in their opinions and preferences, the task force came up with 7 basic questions to identify the right market segment to which the Democratic message must be tailored. 1. Who is your favorite singer, Beyoncé or Taylor Swift? 2. What is your favorite microfeminism? 3. What are your pronouns? 4. Why is Batman a representative of the patriarchy? 5. What is your favorite Starbucks latte? 6. Did you like Amelia Perez to Rachel Zegler's Snow White, or do you like them both equally? 7. Why is it unfair for heterosexual men not to like trans women? C. Elon Musk's ketamine use responsible for best decisions in Trump's campaign. Tesla CEO and former DOJ leader Elon Musk revealed that the best decisions made during Trump's presidential campaign were made under the effect of ketamine and other drugs. It consisted basically of funding Democrats. Once they had the money, they had the means to sabotage themselves. It's well known that Democrats can only win the elections they don't lose despite their best efforts, declared Musk for The Guardian. Asked whether he feared reprisals after having confessed his addictions, which could raise doubts about the legality of his prescriptions, Musk seemed surprised. apparently not having foreseen that such a thing was possible now that he no longer counted on the favor of the president.
This has been the news of this hour. Sponsored by Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Did you vote for Trump in 2016 and then in 2020? This is the right church for you. If so, Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit is the only Christian church that can promise you in the Lord to have 72 virgins in heaven for only a donation of $50 a month. You will have access to those 72 virgins in heaven. For an additional $25, you will be allowed to replace 10 of them, and for $100, Heaven Premium, you will be allowed to choose them for yourself. Guaranteed, if you're not satisfied with those 72 virgins after you die, full refund of your money. We accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover.